Has been in the sun. Hey, YouTube, StreamYard, what's up? Welcome to Wealth Wednesday. The time is now 8:04. Thank you for joining us. All right, so today we have a pretty cool topic. Let me just check the mic. Yep, mic's good, so we don't need this anymore. I'll keep it on for a second. All right, so today we have a pretty cool message today. So we're going to be discussing food scarcity. Yeah, I think this is a topic that is pretty well needed right now, and I think with the war going on in Ukraine and everything happening that's outside, where you're kind of seeing certain supply chain issues, right? This is the time to get ready. This is a time to prepare yourselves, and this conversation will be kind of around the idea of food scarcity, what we can do as individuals to actually maintain a level of protection when it comes to the things that you need outside. Personally, I know that my diet has changed a lot since I've started my spiritual journey, so I haven't really had the need for a lot of things. If you hear my daughter out there, just know she's enjoying her bath time. So for me, since I've been on my spiritual journey, it's been important for me to have the right types of food in my system, because with the right type of food in your system, you can pretty much do anything you want to do, right? They say that you are what you eat. So if you eat the wrong stuff, you're wrong. Saying. So today we'll talk about it. First things first, I want to just say thank you to everybody who's been rocking with Wealth Wednesdays the entire time. I know that our content has shifted a little bit from the financial literacy piece over to relationships, even philanthropy. We'll be talking about that a little bit next episode. But I think we try to give specific topics that are going to be relevant to folks right now, and I think that's one that's going to be very relevant. So folks, thank you for rocking with us, and today let's get into it. All right, so first and foremost, I want to thank StreamYard for hosting us this entire time. They've been pretty awesome about it. Cannot be upset about the way that they rock and roll with us. So StreamYard, thank you for holding us down. And Instagram, you're still waiting. I don't even know what's happening on your end, but that's fine. We don't need you. All right, so let us pull up our topic notes for today. Okay, boom, boom, boom. All right. All right, boom. Yeah, it's been pretty wild, man. Had a lot of crazy things happening. I'm getting notifications about my my seeds. So food scarcity, right? Hey, Auntie, what's going on? I see you on here. What's up? Let me share my screen real quick. So the first issue that we have to discuss right now is supply chain, right? So if we think about the war in Ukraine and what's happening, right? Ukraine is a perfect example of what can happen if you are automatically put into something overnight that you didn't expect, and now all of a sudden you have to worry about what your next meal is going to be, right? In a lot of parts on the continent of Africa, there are a lot of war-torn countries that have been dealing with this for a while, where you have folks that have been displaced, whether it be to war, violence, natural disasters, and they end up in America, they end up in Canada, they end up in places as refugees. So we've seen what national disasters can do, whether it be economic or violent ones, can affect people's ability to get food. Now in America, and that's what we're going to talk about here, so America, Canada, North America, what would you do if you could not get food from the grocery store, right? What would you do if you weren't able to go pick up eggs from the grocery store? Do you have the ability to know how to raise chickens? Do you know how to harvest eggs from a hen? Are you familiar with the type of feed that you would need to have for chickens to thrive? Are you familiar with the type of predators that would eat your chickens? See, all of these things, we have gotten so far from the table where the food is delivered and then how it's sourced. We've gotten so far from the source that we feel like food should just come in packets. I want chicken. Let me get the thighs. Let me just buy that skinless, boneless chicken thighs and cook it. What happened to the connection to the food? And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about my journey is, the fact that I've been going to a halal butcher to get my meats. And that has been an amazing experience because I get to see the actual bird, like the whole bird. I see it. They chop off the head, they give me the neck, they chop it up into little pieces, and then they put it in a bag for me and I cook that. I'm like, wow, this is how you should buy your food. Like, this should be natural. But for me, I'm still one step away. Like, I'm getting closer to the supply chain, but I'm still one step away. And most of us start off that way. So my encouragement to y'all is this: if something happened to your supply chain, if you couldn't get access to the grocery store, how would you survive? If you can get milk, eggs, and bread and fruits and vegetables from the farmer's market, how would you survive? Because you have to start thinking about, do you have a way to harvest things? we eat fruit and vegetables every day. At least you're supposed to, right? I don't, but I try. So if you're eating fruits and vegetables every day, my first question to you is, have you ever harvested the seeds from the fruit and vegetables that you eat? Now, I had a perfect example of this, and my auntie can attest. We've been doing some research on harvesting things. So the last cucumber that I bought it at a farmer's market, and I'm gonna show you what I did with it, right? So I went to my office and I cut up a cucumber, and that's what I did. If you guys can't see it on YouTube, I'm sorry, it's on Instagram. So literally, I cut out the inside of the cucumber, scraped it out, and then after cutting out the inside of the cucumber, what I did was I decided to literally put the seeds in water to see how well they would float. Because the gentleman on Instagram, he said that if your seeds float, which is an example there, if your seeds are floating, that means that they're not the right type of seeds to plant. So the goal is with cucumbers specifically that you scrape the seeds out, and the ones that sink to the bottom, right? Those are the seeds that are good for harvesting. And those are the ones that will actually grow cucumber plants. Okay, cool. So that's what I did with this one, right? So I tried to put it in water and see what would happen. So let's show the water example. Again, and this isn't the first time I've ever done this, but it's this type of, testing that you have to really be comfortable doing. Like I'm in my late 30s. I have never harvested seeds off of anything that I've eaten. I just eat the food. So this is my harvest. I'm trying to put all of the cucumber seeds in a cup of water. And I don't know if you noticed, but none of them are sinking. None sank. All of them floated to the top, which just tells me that either A, that cucumber wasn't picked ripe, which means that the seeds weren't ripe, or B, it's a fake cucumber with fake Monsanto seeds that, aren't supposed to develop into having like some type of like renewable crop, because right now with the splicing genetics of plants, they can do that. They can literally make a plant that they give you the seed for it, and it has something called I think it's called a killer gene or something along those lines, where it literally does not allow it to reproduce. So it's a plant that grows but doesn't have the ability to reproduce, which in reality is like a sterile plant, right? So think about it. Like if you were a sterile man or woman, right? Would you be able to reproduce anything? Chances are no, right? And that's kind of how I view foods without seeds. That cannot be healthy because however you derived a food without seeds means that it's in an unnatural state. And I don't know what else is unnatural about the genetics of that fruit, but we are what we eat. So if we are what we eat, we have to make sure that we're not eating things that are modified to the point where if it comes into our body and becomes a part of us, it could affect how we move and roll as well. All right. So that was the first experiment, right? So now let me show you. And YouTube, I'm sorry you're not getting any of these videos, these visuals, but I'll post the visuals at some point. So here is what happened, and my daughter's going off. Here's what happened when I tried to harvest these seeds, and it only takes 3 days to harvest these specific seeds, okay? That's what I got. So the experiment was you take the seeds that float to the bottom, that sink to the bottom, you put them on a sheet of paper, a wet paper napkin, you put it in a Ziploc bag, and then you seal it off for 3 days. And when you open it, you should get sprouted seeds, right? Most of my seeds floated to the top, but there were a few that sunk to the bottom. So I was like, okay, let me take the few of those and some of the ones that were at the top and just put them in and see what happens. And if you can see, nothing happened. Those seeds are basically husks. Nothing grew from them. That was the end of that, right? Now, here is my experiment number 2. So I tried this one more time. And again, folks, the reason I'm sharing my story is because, again, when you see these things on TikTok and Instagram, you see these stories of gentlemen trying to use seeds to harvest them, right? This is the kind of thinking that you have to have in your mind. Like my father right now, every time he eats an avocado, he takes in the seed of the avocado, he puts it in a plant pot, and it starts sprouting. I'm like, okay, like it's that type of, awareness of life in the food that you're eating that's going to be really important going forward, because we have to think about going forward. We don't have a lot of time to do this. So for folks who are listening right now, I would say first and foremost, heirloom seeds. If you've never ordered heirloom seeds before, I would suggest you get a pack. They're not expensive, range from $12 to $26, and you can get it in bulk. I would suggest that you start buying heirloom organic seeds and just put them in a chest, maybe some type of carrying case that you can use. Because if you need to relocate quickly, those seeds will be the exact same things that you can then use. The system I'm going to show you today, you can use these systems in order to actually create the food that you need going forward, even if you're on the go and you don't have access to a lot of things. There are a lot of systems that are available right now for you to be able to utilize very little water to actually produce well-thriving plants. All right. So here's the second experiment. The second experiment was with lemon seeds. All right. So same exact concept, right? I harvested a lemon. I put them in. wet paper towel, just like before. And this one is actually supposed to take a week. So this is a little different. So this one takes an actual week to do. And I have a treat for you guys. So this was the picture of it at the 3-day mark, but today is actually the 7th day. So it's supposed to be a 7-day process. So let us take a look. Hey, Trisha, what's up? What's up? How you doing, sis? Long time, long time. Nice to see you. All right, so let's take a look at a zoomed in picture of this one, right? So this was 3 days ago. This is what that seedling looked like, right? So you can see that it's sprouting. This is a lemon seed, and I had probably 14 of them on the page. So folks, just for your entertainment, this is the bag that I used, right? So this is the lemon seed experiment that I had. So let's close this out and let's open it together and see what we got. All right. All right, Instagram. This is the first time you're going to see this live, right? How to harvest lemons. I need a surface, but we'll just use this. Okay, so on if you can't see it, YouTube, I'm going to hold it up for you, right? Okay, so here is my harvest. All right. All right, let's see if it's sprouted. Okay. Okay. All right, y'all. Let's see. Okay. Okay. All right. I don't know if you guys can see this, but all right, YouTube, I'm gonna tilt you down real quick so you can see. All right. So YouTube, do you see this one right here? Oh, hold on. That one? See how it's already sprouting? See that? Yep, that's what we want. Okay. There's a few others that are coming along, right? So take a little bit more time. Instagram, let me give you the same view a little bit. So do you see that one right there? That's sprouting. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them in this wrapping right now. But this one seems to be very, I'm leaking all over myself. That one seems to be the best one. So I'm going to wrap this back up. Give it a few more days. Hopefully that one gets a little bit more robust. And I'm going to plant that. Now, what he said was that one lemon seed can grow 120 lemons in a cycle, right? So you think about that. What is the cost benefit analysis, right? Of one lemon seed, which you have probably, maybe 8, 9, 10 to 12 lemon seeds in every lemon, right? If one seed could reproduce 120 lemons at a go, right? Why aren't we doing that? Why do we ever buy lemons? Why do we ever take the time to go and spend? Yeah, I got some sprouts, Auntie. Yeah, man. So why do we go and spend our time to literally buy things that we could create ourselves, right? And that is the freedom that we have to live in. We have to live in a space where we are able to have freedom, food freedom. Now, one of the things that, when I think about what I'm going to do with this lemon seed, and I'm probably going to plant maybe 4 or 5 lemon plants, right? There are 2 types of systems that I've been researching that are going to be very important going forward, especially if there's food scarcity in any of these areas, whether it's America, Canada, North America in general, wherever you may be, the Caribbean. So one of the systems that I'm going to first talk about is called hydroponics. Okay. What is hydroponics? Hydroponics is essentially a growing system that allows you to grow fruits and vegetables without soil. Okay, it uses a different type of bacteria system and just like different canisters that you can actually grow your food in with just water alone, right? And a medium to hold the fruits and vegetables in. So an example of a medium would look like, and YouTube, you're gonna get, now you get to be in the green light because I've got all that stuff on another screen. So you're good. So YouTube's gonna get all the fun now. You guys are gonna not get the fun. All right, so this is a hydroponic system, YouTube. Do you see this? So these are different types of systems. And again, if you are familiar with marijuana production, a lot of folks, they do and can use hydroponics to grow marijuana indoors. And they can use it to also grow other fruits and vegetables in little small canisters, again, without any soil. But in order for that system to work, you have to have access to nitrates and other types of fertilizers for the system to work. So it's not just an easy, one size fit all type situation. No, you have to have a certain drip with the liquid and the nutrients that the plants need in order for them to survive, as well as access to a greenhouse so you can get sunlight, natural sunlight, right? So these are a few examples of hydroponics, right? Now, the one that I'm most interested in is not just hydroponics, right? The one that I'm interested in and the one that I'm working on right now is called aquaponics. Oh, you're tapped in, Auntie? So you're seeing everything, right? You're all up in it. Okay, that's what's up. All right, so the one that I am trying to tap into right now is the one called aquaponics. Now, let me pull that up real quick so you can know what that is. Hold on. If you're on YouTube, you're seeing my feed. And actually, I have a picture of that over here so I can show you guys on Instagram. So let's go. Boom. Okay, that is aquaponics. Okay, let's go to images. Pull up this one here. Okay, so aquaponics is a system that literally is a closed loop system. How it works generally is you have your hydroponics plant setup, you have your fish tank, and what you do is you utilize the runoff from the plants to feed the fish, and then the actual nitrates and excrements from the fish to fertilize and feed the plants. It's a full closed loop system, meaning that you don't actually need other things outside of these two setups in order to create a growing environment, whether it be in a garage, in your basement, wherever it may be. Now, to do this requires some knowledge on the type of fish that you would like to use, the size of the system you want to use, having the right type of pumping setup, the right piping, the right pH level for the water for both the aquaponics section and the hydroponic section. Because remember, you have two systems working simultaneously, right? But once you get familiarized with all of that, this system can essentially give you the ability to grow lemon seed or whatever you may want to grow without having to need soil, one, to be outside, two, and without having to go to the store to get things like fertilizer and other types of stuff. You can actually have all of that inside the closed loop system, right? So if I were to ask you guys, how many of you guys ever heard of something like aquaponics? What would you say? Right? It's a very difficult thing to know about unless you're, in a particular group. So for me, the cool part about this system, right, is that you can decide the type of fish that you want to use. So if you choose an edible fish, for example, let's say you choose some type of trout or maybe a salmon, for example, right? Those are edible fish. If that's the fish that you're harvesting, right, you're able to produce more of those fish because they're mating and they're producing more fish, and you can harvest those fish after a certain amount of months. So now, not only do you have vegetables and fruits, but you can also have protein, fish protein, and not just any kind of fish protein, organic fish protein. One of the reasons why I don't like salmon, farm salmon, is because I don't like what they feed the salmon. I don't have control over what type of chum they give the salmon, whether that be parts of the fish, whether that be parts of fruits and vegetables. We went to the aquarium a month ago and I saw them feeding catfish carrot pieces. I'm like, do catfish eat carrots? Like, is that a thing? And they do. They eat carrots. And I didn't know that they did, but in an aquarium, they're going to show that because, again, you have a whole bunch of people come in there. You probably have folks from the, Environmental Protection Agency and everything else. Where they're like, hey, listen, make sure you're feeding the fish the right things, blah, blah, blah. But in a farm, you're not there. You're not farming those fish. You don't know what they're throwing in, if they're throwing in antibiotics, if they're throwing in, inorganic food or things that are just cheap for them to utilize. So because of that, I don't know what's in the fish. Whereas in this system, you actually can know 100% that your fish are being fed on a very complete vegetarian diet, one, and two, that you know exactly what's in them. Now, let me show you something scary, because you guys seem to think that, the fish that you buy are going to be all perfect and great, right? Let me show you this. Just so you know, you need to look at what is happening in the community around us, because if you don't, you're going to get caught up thinking that you're safe. Anchovies, small, tiny fish that you get in cans, right? Sometimes on pizzas. Anchovies eat plastic because it smells like their prey, right? So 1/4 of fish contained plastics. 1/4 of fish, period, contain plastics. That's for anchovies. But you think that's only for anchovies? No, let me give you another one. This is a picture of what comes out of the ocean right now. And you have to understand that this is the reality, right? This is the reality of what we're dealing with, right? Plastics and fish. I didn't spell plastics right, so forgive me, guys. But they're showing results for it anyway. So thank you for that, right? So on YouTube, are you seeing this? This is what is happening with our fish right now. This is what's going on. They are literally eating whatever's in the ocean. And plastics do a thing where when they break down, they biodegrade into smaller versions of themselves. So let's say you have a water bottle. over time with sun, erosion, the ocean saltwater, pH levels, melting that plastic bottle, it starts to break up and disintegrate into small, tiny little like granules of plastic, right? Now, those granules of plastic can end up in the fish's actual mouth because as they're breathing water in and out, they have to breathe whatever's in the water. And that goes into their stomachs as well. So that's how they eat, but that's also how they breathe. So when fish are inhaling the water that they're swimming through, they're putting and ingesting plastics into their bodies. And it's actually getting crazy now. Like this right here says 70% of the fish that you catch have eaten plastic. 70% of the fish that you eat, period, that are caught, have ingested plastics. 55% of fish species we eat found with microplastics in their gastrointestinal tract. 100 different species of anchovies found to have consumed microplastics, right? So if you eat anchovies now, I'm gonna suggest that you probably stop eating anchovies, just because if you're ingesting the fish that's ingesting the plastics, then that means you're ingesting plastics indirectly, farm to mouth. So folks, this is the type of conversation that you have to start having with your family. I know that a lot of folks love fish, and I am one of them, but I have kind of taken a back seat on fish. The reason why is because I don't want to be caught in a system where, I don't know what's in the fish or what that fish was consuming. And that is why the aquaponic system that I just showed you earlier, when you can harvest your own fish, Auntie says steelhead trout, right? When you can harvest your own fish in your own system, whether it be in your backyard, in your garage, in your basement, and have that be the fish that you now consume on your plate, that's a different type of fish. One, that fish has zero plastics in it. Two, that fish is going to produce offspring that you can then feed on for the rest of your, adult life. And three, if it's a delicious fish that you've chosen, well, now you don't have to worry about what type of fish you're going to have for dinner. Like you already know, I'm a salmon guy. Yeah. So now here's the catch. With the aquaponic system, you have to have a fish that fits the type of system that you're using, right? So every fish has a different size. I mean, salmon can grow to I don't know how many pounds, but they're big fish. Growing in that system, they don't grow as much because they don't swim as much. They don't get as big. They don't eat as much, right? But, depending on the type of system that you pick, if you want a small system, now, the way that you can break this down is in a 4x4 foot space that you set up for an aquaponic system, you could essentially grow 100 pounds of fruits and vegetables in that space. That's how much actual produce you can create in a 4 feet by 4 feet square space in the system, right? So if I were to ask you, where could you go to get 100 pounds of produce for free every year or every month? Where, right? That's where we need to get to. We need to get to a space where we are taking these types of examples seriously, and we're looking at ways to get food and not be having a scarce situation with food. Tice, what up, brother? Nice to see you, man. Yeah, today we are talking about food scarcity, and we're talking about two systems, and hydroponics and aquaponics. So hydroponics is a system where you can grow your fruits and vegetables with just water, right? Water, a median, and having drips of water actually feed the plants and vegetables. An aquaponic system is where you actually have a closed loop hydroponic system, meaning that you have the fertilizing fish there, and you're able to fertilize your plants with the fish, and then the fish eat actually the runoff from the plants. So between those two, they actually create a closed loop, meaning that you don't have to worry about going outside to get anything. You have to worry about, getting extra nitrates or having extra, feed for the plants. No, the plants can literally produce whatever they're supposed to produce, and they have enough fertilizing waste from the fish to do it. So it's an aquaponic system. Let me actually show you guys what it looks like for those who just joined us. So this is an aquaponic setup, right? And I'll put it back on here, and actually I'll close this one down a little bit. All right. So the aquaponic setup is essentially just having a hydroponic setup for your plants, an aquarium, or basically a water vessel for your fish, and connected to systems where the fish fertilize the actual plants and back and forth, and you pump the water up and down through it, right? So this system, again, is something I've been researching. I haven't started it yet, but I will be starting it soon. And the goal of this system is to make sure that we all understand how to grow our own foods. Earlier in this episode, I showed my lemon seedlings. I have about 7 of them, and 3 of them are sprouted pretty well. So I'm waiting for them to sprout a little bit more for me to transplant them into soil and then grow my own lemons. They say that 1 lemon seed can grow 120 lemons. So for me, again, we have to start thinking of food scarcity in a manner where we're not just concerned about where our food's going to come from, but create a system that's going to actually be able to harvest your own food for as long as you want. Now, one of the other things that I want to talk about as well is creating a smaller footprint. So for folks who are following us right now, and they're here on the channel, one of the things that I've been really trying to work on personally is having access to less things and requiring less things. Having access to less things, meaning that I cut out things that are no longer serving me, whether that be different memberships that I don't use, whether that be different habits that I had that were unproductive, whether that be certain relationships and friendships that I have that may not be fulfilling. Like I have cut off so many of my friends, acquaintances, I should say, because again, if I don't like what they're posting, I just cut them off. If you look at my Instagram over the last, I'd say 6 months, I did a huge cut. I probably dropped like 200 people. Why? Because I was looking at the society around us, looking at what people were focused on, and I said, I no longer want to be following someone that's thinking about that. So unfollow. I did it on Instagram. I'm about to do it on Facebook. I haven't done it on Facebook yet, but the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to create a footprint that is small, tiny, but whatever's on there is magnificent, right? The goal that I'm seeing for myself personally is, how can I be the most efficient version of myself possible in order to get the most efficiency, right? Get the most bang for my buck for whatever time I have left on this planet. Because guess what? You're only here for a short period of time, y'all. Like we're not here forever. But for the time that you're here, what have you done? How many degrees do you have? How many businesses did you set up? How many people did you help? How many families did you rescue from some sort of catastrophic situation? How many friendships did you create? How many relationships did you hold on to dearly? How many people can say that you're a dear friend? Like all of these things require your time, your energy, and your attention. And I think right now what social media has done for us is give us access to each other in a very distant type of situation. Like we just came through a pandemic, like where you couldn't even go outside. You couldn't see your family, you couldn't see your friends. If you live in a different country, you couldn't even enter certain countries. I'm Canadian. I'm also Trinidadian and Nigerian. I couldn't go to any of those countries during the pandemic. Why? Because the borders were closed in Canada. For me, as a citizen, I could have gone back, but it required a lot more energy, right? My thing is, we all made it through this pandemic together, but it did leave scars for everybody. And those scars are, how are you handling the things you need to handle for your personal goals? Like, how did the pandemic slow you down? Were you trying to start up another degree? Were you trying to purchase a new home? Were you trying to, invest in some sort of venture capital? Were you trying to get, cryptocurrency? I remember I was telling you guys that I was going to invest in crypto last June, right? I never did it. I did not even have the capacity to invest in that because I was so busy focused on my nonprofit and the business, whatever, like working on the way and all that type of stuff. Like I didn't even get a chance to do that. And look at the crypto market now, right? So to me, it's like everything happens the way it's supposed to, but you still have to focus on this. Like going forward right now, I think it's very important that we decide and be consciously deciding what type of productivity, what type of attention are you going to give to things in your life, right? Because there are folks who have their attention on things like vacations or their attention on things like a Tesla. Like for example, if you know me, anyone that knows me, you know that I'm a big electric car type of guy. I love electric cars. I like the ability of being off grid, like the ability of not having to worry about, where what the pump is saying, because the pump is going to be extreme going forward. Like the gas prices are going to go up. That's just what's going to happen. I love electric cars. I've always said that I want to have a Tesla by the time I hit my birthday last year. That was the goal for last year. I still don't have it yet. Did I put an order in? I could have, but I didn't do it yet because the order would have taken until this year in November. I was like, no, let's get a used one. Have I bought one yet? No. Why? Because my energy is focused on something else. And that's my point. Like, when you get to a space where you realize that every decision that you make, every time you decide to think on something, that you bring that thing closer to you, right? That is power. And we have to start harnessing that. And that doesn't just start with your thoughts. It starts with your intentions. It starts with your actions. It starts with the things that you consume. It starts with how well you've prepared for what's coming next. Like you have to really start focusing your energy on all the things that are going to happen that can affect you and your family. Why? Because if you're not thinking about it, then when things do happen, you're not going to be prepared. Think about all the folks in any type of crisis that were prepared for it, right? When Hurricane Maria happened, and Puerto Rico got hit, right? The folks who had their own idea of growing their own crops indoors, or they had a safe where they had extra cash set aside, or they had family members and friends in certain locations that would have access to certain things that they would need, whether that be near a grocery store or near certain supplies, whatever have you. Those folks made it out of those scenarios better than the folks who weren't prepared and just happened to get caught up in the earthquakes, caught up in the hurricane, caught up in the wind, the flooding, all that type of stuff. So, that's a natural disaster, but that's going to continue to increase. It's going to keep happening. We're going to have more of these unnatural natural disasters because our world is changing, our climate is changing, everything around us is changing. So pay attention. One other thing to pay attention to as well is the sun. It's getting hot. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a lot of droughts happening across the world and even in America as well. There have been places that are normally well farmed by now that are still dry and burning. And, all of these changes, it's going to affect the supply chain. I think it was maybe, I want to say it was maybe January of this year. We had certain farmers literally throwing away potatoes because they just didn't have enough truck drivers to drive them to the stores, right? And they were told just dump them, and whoever wants them can go get them. But we can't keep them in the factories. We can't keep them on the farm. We have to harvest them and just throw them out. That's what we're doing right now. There's literally a shortage of farmable land. And if you think about who's been buying the land, look at Bill Gates. Go check out what he's been doing over the last 7 months. Not to name drop, but allegedly he's been buying a lot of farmland. Why? Because I think he sees what's coming as well. And we have to be sure to make sure that we are not caught up in a scarcity run. Because when that happens, when the scarcity run happens, your preparation now will make the biggest difference for your family's survival. I've actually walked through like survival, like, okay, if this were to happen, what would you do next type scenarios with my family, right? And even with my friends and my close confidants, like I have a plan for all of that. And as a matter of fact, if you don't have a bug out plan or have an idea of what you would do if things were to go south, if you don't have armament, if you don't know how to defend yourself, if you don't know how to, get into a safe barricaded position in the event that there's some sort of war-torn situation happening outside your home, start thinking about that. Not to scare anybody, not to get you to think like, hey, be concerned about everything. No, but it's a conversation that you should have, just because those are the types of things that people don't ever prepare for until they happen. And when it happens, it's too late. All right. So folks, today we're talking about food scarcity. And let me actually pull up on our YouTube. I'm just going to put up the words food scarcity right now, right? Just period. Just put up the words. And you're going to see the news. Russia war will have shattering effect on food shortages in Africa. You're going to see governments fall. The first article 2 weeks ago, right, from Fox News. Here's why food shortages are unlikely to occur in the US. Okay, cool. While prices might continue to rise due to high energy costs and demand pressures, experts don't expect food shortages will occur. Let's click on this. This is CNBC. So CNBC says that they're unlikely to happen in America. Looming food shortages, probably not the USA. Thousands queue for petrol, gas, Sri Lanka warnings. Shanghai COVID lockdown, food shortages, drones, starving animals. Food insecurity is a bigger problem than energy. Skipping meals and shrinking portions. Brits are being warned of apocalyptic food price rises, right? Now, I'm going to go back to this first article. This first article says that here's why the shortages are unlikely to happen in the US. This is CNBC. Let me click on this. Let me open up my screen here so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Okay. So this article was written in April 20th of this year. Key points. The war in Ukraine is putting a massive strain on the global food supply. Food prices are rising at historic rates, while prices for commodities like wheat and corn are at their highest levels in a decade. Despite those factors, experts don't expect food shortages to occur in the United States. Now, here's what I call propaganda, right? Now, if I know that something's coming that's going to probably affect people, I'm not going to sound the alarm, because then people will go back into that whole bag of, I'm going to buy all the toilet paper, all the rice, all the bottled water. You remember what happened when COVID first happened? Do you guys remember the run on essentials? That wasn't even unnecessary. That wasn't even necessary, but it happened everywhere in North America. You couldn't find toilet paper, you couldn't find paper towels, you couldn't find hand sanitizer, right? That was just COVID. That was just COVID-19 lockdown. They're already seeing the prices of items going up tremendously. And if you go to any island outside of America, you're going to see that the food shortages are not just because of what you can produce locally. It's about the import and export game. Look at any port on any part of the country, whether that be in the West Coast, the East Coast, the South, all of the shipping ports in the entire country are backed up 6 months, which means that the food that's being brought in from other countries is literally sitting on a barge for 3 to 6 months before it even gets off of the ships, right? There are ships ported in California that have been there for 6 months that haven't been able to offload their vegetables and fruits that are spoiling in the cargo hulls, right? So when a country knows that this is happening and they're not actually acknowledging it and they're saying shit like, oh, it's not going to, despite those factors. So despite food prices going up, despite historic rates on inflation of food, despite commodities and wheat and corn at their highest levels in a decade, despite those three major things, they're saying we're not going to have a shortage in America, and there's no basis behind it. Economically, you can't prove that, because if you think about inflation, inflation erodes your money. So if you made $50,000 last year and your food prices went up by 10%, you made 10% less because you had to spend 10% more on food that you didn't have to spend last year. So that means that your money is getting smaller. Incomes are not increasing in America. There's no, the average median income in New York is still $56,000 for households, right? So we're not making more money. The property values are going up exponentially. My property, for example, it went up by $200,000 in the last 2 years. Did the house change? Did the size of the house change? Did the neighborhood get better? Nope, none of that happened. But because there was a shortage on supply, the demand for housing went through the roof and allowed all the market price of houses to go through the roof. So what I'm saying is, this is not rocket science, but it's also not truthful. And media is doing this thing where they're going to sell you on a headline. They're going to give you what they say is happening economically and then expect you not to conclude something different than what they're concluding. So let me read this article. This is going to be another major test for the food supply system, said Diane Charlton, assistant professor at agricultural economics at Montana State University. We will have to watch very carefully what's happening in other parts of the world and consider ways to reduce risk for food shortages and conflict. Meanwhile, food prices in the U.S. are rising at historical rates, while prices for commodities like wheat and corn are at their highest levels in a decade. What's more, the U.S. Department of Agriculture predicts that food at home prices will see an increase of up to 4% by the end of 2022. Despite the prospect for continued rising prices, however, experts don't expect food shortages to occur in the United States. Let's read what their reasoning is. It's important to realize that the U.S. doesn't import very much from Ukraine, explained Joseph Glover, and senior. We may see some shelves that are empty for various kinds of food products like we have for a while now as we recover from the pandemic. But I can say with some real confidence that in the United States, the average consumer is not going to see a shortage of bread because of what's going on in Ukraine. Okay. So did you see what they did? They basically try to convince you of their premise that the United States is not going to have a food shortage because Ukraine isn't supplying them directly with food. That's what they're saying. Because Ukraine's issue is not America's issue. America produces a lot of its stuff here. Okay. Let's look at American production. So what affects American production here, right? Supply chain issues, right? Employment, any type of economic issues that happen in that state, truckers being able to ship goods and services, the farm keep and the people that are actually helping to upkeep the farms, the labor rates for the farm helpers. Like when we think about America and what their agricultural system is, it's pretty much predicated on folks from south of the border who are coming up and helping to farm a lot of the fruits and vegetables. But with the pandemic, they haven't been able to come up like that. They haven't been able to actually help continue to harvest the crops that we have, which is why the food prices have gone up by 10%. Now, if these folks still don't get more employment to come up here and harvest the fruits and vegetables that we take for granted, that we get plucked in for pennies on the dollar, that means that we'll have to harvest it, right? Folks that are citizens of America. Cool. Which means that the standard rate to pay them is $15 an hour in New York, and other places it's a little bit less. But let's say $12 an hour is standard. Okay. You're not paying the farm help that. The folks that are helping on the farms right now that help to pick all the stuff that you guys are eating in your grocery are not being paid $15 an hour. So if we start doing it now, that price has to reflect into the cost of what you're going to have to buy at the grocery store, which means that the food prices that we see now are the lowest that they'll be going forward. And they're already higher than they're supposed to be in the last 10 years. Think of how the breadcrumbs fall, y'all. Like, do not get caught up in this part of the propaganda where people are trying to sell you on a war in Ukraine being the reason why you're not going to get food here. No. How this is going to work is very simple. Ukraine's food supply shortage is going to affect Africa directly, right? Cool. Africa imports a lot of its food from those types of countries. Okay, so do other people. They import wheat and everything else. If there is a lack of supply in those countries, they're going to have to go somewhere else to get that food. Where are they going to come to? Whoever produces their own food, which would probably be us and other folks. But now here's the issue. We cannot ship that food to them in a timely fashion because our entire logistic system here is backed up 3 to 6 months. So what does that tell you? That tells you that if anything were to happen catastrophically right now, we wouldn't be able to restock for 3 months or 6 months. So do you have a 3 to 6 month plan? Right? That is the only question that I have for you. Do you have a 3 to 6 month plan if you did not have access to food at a grocery store? This is why I want you guys to start investing in what's going on, Legs. How you doing, brother? This is why I want you guys to start investing in Sis. What's going on, Nelly Licious? What's up? What's up? I want you guys to start investing in your knowledge, investing in your ability to grow, your ability to harvest the things that you eat. And if you're eating foods and the seeds of those foods and fruits and vegetables do not have the ability to be harvested, you shouldn't be eating them. It's very simple. Everything that you consume has to be able to produce life, all of it. If it doesn't, you shouldn't have it. All right. So folks, that's what we're talking about right now. I mean, it's a crazy topic. And I think, it does have a lot of nuances to it. And I just Googled again, food scarcity. And the first 3 articles came up. 1 out of 5 said that we won't have a problem. And 4 out of 5 said we have a problem. Okay. So that'll tell you what you need to know. Let me look up something else now. Inflation in the United States. Inflation in food prices. Okay, so let's look at Bloomberg. Okay, in Turkey's inflation soared 70%. Turkey's inflation is at 73%. That's crazy. Global food prices are starting to fall with a few key exceptions. Gas prices, food inflation, Washington Post. Okay, let's check it out. 2 weeks ago at the G7 conference in Germany, they're not going to let me see this article, are they? Yeah, the Washington Post has this way of not showing you stuff until you sign up for their things. So let me see if I can get what I need to get. 18% bear market closing gasoline prices. I'm just reviewing this real quick. Slow or negative economic growth coupled with rising inflation. That's called stagflation. That's where we're at right now. War poses a more serious economic threat to Europe than to the United States, particularly given the continent's dependence on Russian energy. Okay. Russia's economy is doing even worse since the war began, though the White House says it expects Russia's gross domestic product to shrink as much as 15% due to sanctions imposed. World Bank has also warned of a huge buildup of debt, particularly in the poorest countries, with debt payments at their highest level in 20 years. Half of low-income countries are now categorized as being at risk of debt distress, according to the Center of Global Development, a Washington-based think tank. Defaults by poorer nations could have ripple effects throughout the global financial markets if creditors worldwide go unpaid. This is a very difficult economic situation, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said after a conference on Wednesday. But she, like many European officials, still held out some hope that policymakers would be able to handle the difficult circumstances. The global economy, particularly in the United States, was projected to grow relatively quickly in 2022 before the war, creating a buffer that may help avert recession. She was, I think it's conceivable there could be a soft landing, Yellen said, referring to the potential for the Federal Reserve to cool inflation without causing a recession. They're basically trying to convince us that even though there's a war in Ukraine that's affecting the global markets, that there is a lot of smaller countries that have debt that may not be able to actually pay their debts. That's a big thing, and that affects everybody. Think of the mortgage-backed security crisis that happened, right, in 2007 and 8. So what happened? You had all these mortgages that were chopped up into small little investment pools, and as folks foreclosed on their houses, those entire mortgage assets became worth nothing, right, because they were not paid on. Those mortgages were no longer an asset because the houses were foreclosed. Money was just gone, right? That's what happens when companies or countries, when companies default on their assets, that's what happens. People lose money. Now, when it happens on a nation level, when nations default on their obligations, that again is catastrophic for the group that is holding that currency. Think of it this way. Someone owes you $100, right? That person can't pay you. Well, now you're out $100 and you loaned them $100 and they said they give you back 120, right? So now as the country that borrowed that money, now you don't even have access to the money that you thought you had. So if you were going to use that to pay off for something down the road, it's not available. So one small country like collapsing can impact all the countries that invested in that small country. And that ripple effect can just continue to go. Brings to mind the movie from the 70s titled Soylent Green, Affordable Housing and Food Shortages. Yeah, no, this is the same type of economic structural collapse that I can see happening. When you talk about inflation, you talk about food prices going up, wages not going up. You talk about property values going up. People are going to start foreclosing if they don't have access to government subsidies. Like, you're seeing a lot of people, even tenants, not paying their rents on time. So using, different types of government programs to help them pay their rent. Like, all of those programs will eventually stop trying to cover the economy. Because again, what is affording that? That's literally government printing money. That's what it's doing. It's saying, hey, I'm going to print more money and give it to all of my people to pay for those bills. When the money stops being printed, because that's causing inflation, right? When they stop printing it, and they stop giving those handouts, what happens to all of those assets, right? It's going to be a very difficult landing. But amongst all of that, the most important thing is, do you still have food? Do you have access to food? What's up, Ali? Oh, congratulations, man, on your graduation, sir. I would love to have attended, but I couldn't go. But I was there in spirit, man. So Ali, congratulations on graduating, man. That is a great cousin of mine. Graduated from, I think it was the Army, right? It was Army or the Navy. Which one? I can't remember which one. But yeah, I love the way that they dress you guys with the swords and stuff, man. That stuff is dope. All right. So folks, that's it. I mean, my thing, again, I'll go back to the basic line, which is, regardless of what the news cycle says, regardless of what's happening, just know that if prices for the food that you have on your table are going up, chances are it's going to affect you long term. That's not something that is a short term, let me just, I'll be fine if I don't get, no. Start thinking about those types of things immediately. Start thinking about how you can reproduce your food. Start researching aquaponics, hydroponics, learning how those systems work, buy heirloom seeds, and start actually growing things in your home. Start the process, like grow a fruit or vegetable. I actually had a goal for 2022 to actually start harvesting and growing food inside my house, right? So, that's going to still happen, and I'm getting closer, right? It's just a matter of picking the right system and making sure that, I'm investing in that, right? Everyone's got to do that. Even if you start with something as simple as like basil, oregano, the simple spices that you use, start small, but don't be afraid to get into real fruits and vegetables that you eat. And as a matter of fact, I would actually write down all the fruits and vegetables that you want to consume, that you buy from the grocery store, and start seeing if there are ways that I can actually harvest this and grow this for myself, right? That's the key. Because once you can get to that space where you no longer need a grocery store, you can then start providing that 100 pounds of food to your families and friends. And let's say you don't even need 100 pounds of food. If you're producing that, you can share that with folks who don't have anything. It's actually a shame that we have to pay for food. It's a shame. Back in the day, our ancestors didn't pay for food. They didn't go to the store in the market to go and buy apples that were on trees or mangoes from, you would walk outside, you would pluck a mango and eat it. As a matter of fact, you would harvest your mangoes and you would give it to the people in the village. It's free. Mother Nature gave us all of these things for free. The fact that they're monetized and it's a monopoly and most times, and there are companies like Monsanto and everyone else that are trying to keep you away from actually having organic produce in your stores, it just shows the level of evil on this planet right now. It shows the fact that folks are not connected to Mother Nature. They're not connected to humanity. And we have to get that connection back. We've got to start producing our stuff. We've got to start sharing those things. Because if I planted a bunch of fruits and vegetables here and I have 100 pounds of produce, I'm going to my neighbor's house right next door, and I'm going to hand him cucumbers. I'm going to hand him lemons. Like, yo, here, my tree is harvesting. You want some lemons? And guess what? If I'm growing lemons, he can grow limes, or I'm growing apples and he's growing oranges. That's how this used to work back in the day. We would barter things. Give yourself the ability to have resources and assets if everything collapses around you. And think about the aquaponic system, right? You have certain fish. Let's say you have river trout or salmon or whatever. If I have a salmon farm in my house, right, that's feeding my plants and the fish are feeding the animal, and the plants are feeding the animals, the fish, I could harvest those fish, go to my neighbor's house, say, hey, you want some salmon? Here you go, fresh salmon, right out of my tank. Think about being able to provide a resource to somebody like that costs you nothing. Once you set up the system, it costs nothing to run. And when I say nothing, I don't mean that there's not a setup cost or an ongoing cost, because the pumps that the aquaponic system requires, those are motors, right? So what I'm going to research next is how to set up solar panels to actually use them to keep the system going, right? And how to get that back into that whole renewable situation where the solar panels will charge a charging station of some kind that will then power the entire system. That's the ideal closed loop that I want to make sure that I get to. And if there's a way to tie that into the aquaponic system, that's kind of what I'm looking for. So folks, again, these are all things that are conversation starters. If you've never heard of these topics before, hydroponics, aquaponics, please Google them, research them, try to figure out what type of fish you'd want to eat. And guess what? You can even use goldfish. Goldfish are like $1 a fish. You can use them to do the same thing because, again, they produce the same level of nitrates that your plants will need in order for them to grow healthy and strong. So it doesn't matter the type of fish you have. You can have on-table fish, edible fish, or inedible fish that can cost you nothing, but the system can still run at different sizes based on the type of fish that you have in there, right? And their ability to reproduce. Now, one of the things I'll tell you just before we end this live is on the fish side. You know, fish have a specific pH level that they're allowed to exist in, right? So you have to be familiar with what type of pH level that is, one, and the temperature level of your system, because certain fish can handle cooler waters than others, and some fish need warmer waters than others. And depending on what area of the world you live in, if you have harsh winters, you may not want to have a warm water fish, because if the temperatures change too much, all the fish in the system can die. If that happens, your entire aquaponic system will collapse. So it's important for you to get familiarized with where you want to set up the system, how flexible you want it to be. If you want fish that can provide different variations in weather, you got to look at the type of fish that are good. And you can even look up best type of fish for aquaponic systems. I did that. There's about 14 different types, and I settled on 4 that I'm really kind of comfortable with. So, and I live in the northeast. So for us, we have winters here, and I wanted to get a fish that's going to be able to not be too big, but also be able to handle that cooler temperature in the event that, you know, the house is a little bit cooler and, you know, and they have to be outside or in the greenhouse or whatever have you, they can handle the temperature. So all of these things are considerations that you have to think about. All right. So folks, that's all we got today. So going forward, just so you guys know, we're going to be transitioning from the Wealth Wednesday series. So I don't know how many more of these I'm going to do, but I'm going to have, you know, I'm going to slowly kind of like get down to certain topics that I want to get to, because as I'm transitioning, you know, from doing these live podcasts on Instagram to the YouTube channel and to the actual, you know, Apple podcasting straight from StreamYard, it's important for us to have content that's available for everyone to kind of get access to, but also very important for me to continue to focus on the financial literacy course and how I want to package that up, because, you know, as things change around us, it's important for us to package things that are going to be appropriate. You know, I think having a survival, you know, kit program might be important along with the financial literacy, because knowing how to save money and how to, you know, invest in certain things is important. But right now, I can't say that investing in, you know, a system that's going to grow your food is less important than the stocks. Like, no, it could be more important right now, you know, and no one's talking about that. So as a person that's in finance, and I realize that, you know, when you put your money into the markets, and the market right now is trash for a lot of folks. Like, a lot of my stock picks are still low, and I'm buying in slowly into all of them as well. But I'd rather invest my money into a system like my food than just into the market right now in full blow. So again, these are the conversations that we have to have, the tough conversations. Like, there are folks who had a lot of money in their 401ks that are now in half. Why? Because stock market fell. So you have to realize that when you invest in assets, certain assets don't ever fall. Your properties have all gone up. If you have a system like this that's growing you 100 pounds of food, that's always going to grow you 100 pounds of food. Like, that's something that can consistently, even if the price of food goes up, for you, it doesn't change, right? So folks, that's it. Thank you for joining me, Auntie. Appreciate having you on here. And everybody else, like I said, we're going to continue these experiments. I got my seeds, got to put them back in a dark place, make sure that they continue to grow. But by next week, I'm going to have an update for you guys on how my lemon harvesting went. All right, so folks, thank you so much for joining us again. Until next time, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Know that, you know, as food scarcity becomes more prevalent, please prepare, buy heirloom seeds, start figuring out your system that you want to grow those foods in your home. Find a way, find a corner that's good lighting, and try to start setting up these things now, because again, the shortages are going to continue to happen. We're going to have a shortage of equipment. All these things will be hard to find when everyone's scraping and trying to find it. So get to it before it becomes dire. Okay? That's my advice to you guys. Get your systems in place before it becomes difficult to do so. All right, so folks, appreciate you guys, value you guys. Instagram, YouTube, Thank you for rocking with us. We'll catch you guys next week. I think I'm going to be doing a book review next week and the update on the lemon tree stuff. So that's what we got to look forward to next week. All right. So, folks, be good to yourselves, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay. Take care. Peace. Peace. All right, YouTube. I'll catch you guys next week, y'all. Peace.